okay, I think I'll just wait for this to evolve a little bit more and then see where I fit in. And then an entry point about a month ago, and with someone who was involved locally and was kind of trying to start our local chapter, and I was like, I'll help you. And so that's how it evolved for me. So I've really only been heavily involved in the last month. And
where did you meet the person in person that you?
Oh, I met them online because I was looking for people to, like, I didn't have anyone in my immediate area to go to the protests with. And so I wanted to like meet somebody in person and have like a little partner. Because it had been a while since I'd done something like that and I really wanted to go. So then I met in like another online space for our state. And they seemed really cool and we met up in person, and now we're getting pretty close. So yeah, and then we're starting our chapter, and
is it just the two of you right now?
No, we've got about, I would say, 10 engaged members of the chapter. We've had our first meeting, and there were 6 people at it. So I expect it's going to be like that for a while, roughly 10 active and about 6 people coming to the meetings. But that'll kind of like go in and out as you know, who can make it and stuff.
So how do y'all what do y'all do at your meetings? I guess you've had only a few meetings.
We only had 1 meeting so far.
Okay.
So we just did basic intros and kind of laid out like our most, you know, we basically said all of our backgrounds and why we're coming to this, and kind of tried to lay out our most burning questions, tried to answer as much as we could, and then kind of go step by step charting the next path forward. And my co-facilitator actually has experience in sociocracy. So they're going to lead a sociocratic style meeting and see if it's, you know, even if it's, you know, we can't have like a contained organization, we would still like to investigate whether or not sociocratic style meetings work for us. So that's where we are right now. We're going to do a sample one in our meeting at the end of March. And I've worked in like small groups, and I've got background kind of learning about intentional community governance and co-op governance. And so
did you take classes on that, or how did you learn those skills?
A lot of like research and online workshops. So I kind of know the development steps, but I haven't been actually involved in a functioning one yet.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, and then and to be clear, what I meant about strategy teams, like I think it's okay for there to be some teams that are nebulous, and even for strategy team to be a little bit nebulous at the moment. But to me, it seems like strategy team is one of the teams that should be a little more formed. Not that there aren't people coming in and out of it, but it's important to, I think, for that specific type of team to get it formed, because the people will want guidance from strategy team as time goes on.
So a couple things. One, in relationship to the strategy.
That's all I have to say for now.
Oh, can you hear me? Oh, I'm on mute again. Okay.
Guidance as far as like what steps to take next now that you have a group, or
all right,
like guidance for what?
I think both at the national level, for like help with crafting demands and like the process, like going through the phases that are already outlined, fleshing out those phases more, and then also some kind of guidance to the local chapters when they need it. Like obviously the local chapters are going to be doing a lot on their own and creating their own strategies that are unique to their areas, but having when we get to that point where there's more sort of you know, where just things are kind of like moving through from national to local, having a team that's kind of like gathering and figuring out what works, what doesn't work, stuff like that. When we get to that point, will also be helpful.
Nice. So a couple things I wanted to add here, just quickly, for in terms of the strategy meeting, I definitely agree what you were saying. One thing that JD brought up to me that I think you'd be interested in knowing is that in my mind, from what I've heard, the strategy, well, besides the tech team is doing a lot of tech projects, right? But I don't know if that's actually a coordinated effort of the tech team or just random people are working on random projects, right? But
Pretty sure it's just random people picking whatever project they're going to work on.
yeah. So,
yeah, it's right now. Some of them would like to get a little bit more coordination, so I'm actually kind of helping them see if that's even possible from where they're at the moment.
Nice.
But at the moment, yeah, it's like random people working on random projects and wondering if we can get more coordinated.
Nice. So anyways, like going back to the strategy team, for me, the strategy team was actually one of the most organized teams because JD told me that the strategy team actually scheduled and did a meeting. This was like a month ago, 3 weeks or a month ago. And I didn't go, I didn't actually know about the meeting that they was scheduled. But supposedly 30 people showed up. That's what JD said. And that it was just like yeah.
It was way bigger than we had anticipated.
Yeah, just like way too many people than they thought, and it wasn't particularly functional. And so that week, right after that meeting happened, and there was no recording. I haven't really seen too much out of that meeting as far as like detail. I think there were some notes.
There should be a notes thread that had a bunch of the notes from that meeting on there, but let me see if I can find it.
I think I did see some of the notes from it, but overall, the general consensus from me and JD, because we had our first meeting, me and JD, a week after that, and we talked about how it just 30 people is just too many, that we need to keep the group small to more like under 10. And so we talked about how splitting up groups and how decentralized democracy and consensus-based decision making require smaller groups, around 10, right? So or 8 or 12 or whatever, so in the context,
number was specifically 8, but that's
JD's number is 8. Some people it's 12. I'm more around 10. I mean, it just, the point is that once you get to 30 people, 40 people, 50 people or more, it's just not, you can't have consensus. You can't actually have a voice, right? So anyway, so that's one thing that I think is important to mention in case you didn't know about that, Elderberry. As far as like, functional sociocracy, cooperatives, like I have extensive experience in facilitation and running cooperatives and building functional models of sociocracy and decision making. The problem is that just finding people willing to even do it, let alone schedule. So scheduling is one part, but then it's actually just doing the process. So the three of us could be functioning with sociocracy right now, or functioning with some sort of like agenda and meeting and getting agreement on our time and our topics and all that, but it's like it requires a effort to stop and then build agreement around that and slow down everything, So sometimes that can be a difficult process. But anyways, I have plenty of other things that go, but I'll stop there. Check.
No, that's very helpful background for my understanding. And I also see myself as like, I'm existing in a lot of different spaces right now. So I'm not even sure if like strategy team is really the right place for me, or if I'm just sort of like sitting in on discussions to help it form or something like that. Especially because I go back to full-time work in May, so I'm going to be like really swamped. So I think for the moment, like I'm here to do what I can to like funnel people into some sort of a group that does meet regularly, and figures out what the need really is, and sort of building it around need. And that is why I proposed the continuity task team, because I felt like I saw a need for it. I will say that since I put up that proposal, I've seen a lot of like little groups of people kind of working on aspects of it just naturally, because they also saw a need for those things. So even though it's not being what's the word? Even though there hasn't really been a full assessment and it's not being worked on by a core team yet, there are like facets of CTC happening already. So, and again, I know I told you, Jay, that like I proposed that because I was just like, this is probably something that could maybe solve our problems and maybe other people can like run with it. And so, you know, I wish that I knew exactly how the start of the spring at my restaurant was gonna hit me, but basically I have to like clear my schedule leading up to it as I go back to this like really, really intense, busy restaurant, and then see what else I can fit in after I get it readjusted.
Yeah, I have a kind of timeline in May as well. I'll be traveling in starting in May and doing some more global stuff, and like it's just but either way, I mean, I still want to do my best to support, and then obviously I'll be back later in the year. But I mean, overall, it's just you know, in terms of looking at the evaluation, and hopefully I didn't like cut you off or anything, Elderberry. I don't know if you were done, but just cut me off if you had other things to say.
Oh
But
no,
it,
I mean, I paused because I was wrapping up, and
yeah.
I just basically wanted to hear like what you guys think our next step, and are like, is anyone from that original meeting still kind of in touch with and that original strategy meeting and stuff like that?
I think some of those members are still around, but I don't think I haven't seen many comments or like, I think H was one of the ones that was in that group. Who's the other one?
Oh, they've been really heavily involved in setting up the Massachusetts Discord.
H. Okay, yeah, that may be why they're not as active here.
Yeah, I would suspect.
I remember there was a lot of us there for sure.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of I love the idea of like next steps and thinking about next steps. I mean, for me, for me the 3 levels of evaluation of this before, and then we had this huge massive influx where we went from 3,000 people to over 10,000 people on the Discord, and then now afterwards, I mean, for me it was a very clear, like, you know, bell curve there, and you know, of the 5,000, 8,000 people who got involved, and you know, the thousands of people who've come through the welcome session, for me the question is, what is the percentage of retention, right? Like what is actually happening? And then also we have like you know, there is obviously work going on setting up the local chapters, but the question is where you know, how many people are actively, you know, doing that and moving that forward. And then for me, that goes into the question where it's like, if those numbers are not necessarily as high as we want them to be, and it's also, you know, almost impossible even to figure out what those numbers are, and there's very little accountability to anything, that it's just like, I mean, for me, the first step of anything is literally just like a group dynamics. Like, it's the same thing with the state chapters. It's like, if you don't have just a single session where everyone can come connect and collaborate and listen to each other, how do you go from anything else from there, you know? So it's like a state chapter, for example, in California, where you have 40 million people, you could have like basically a complete replication of the entire, there could be 10 teams on the state level supporting all the local organizing groups, right? So it's like even just within California, it's like the whole entire structure could be replicated to oversee 40 million people across the entire state. I mean, it's huge, right? Same thing in Texas and other massive states. They're practically like little countries in of themselves. So in the context of like getting clarity on a functional model, it's like the first step is just having a cohesive group that is meeting regularly. For me, the only national cohesive regular scheduled, you know, session that I've found is the welcome session, right? Which is one of the reasons I go to it every week, and will continue to go to every week as long as I can, until we can find people who are willing to schedule and do additional, just like national circle communications, and ideally, you know, publicly and transparently, but also anything would be better than nothing. So I mean, I think it would be helpful to have more of an organizational context and like a hub where things are happening at the national
So-
level. But yeah, check.
So uh, maybe I hadn't described this well enough. So in my concept, in my idea of structure, uh, I've been kind of a proponent of this 8 number. And if each person, you said you're elder, you were saying that you're getting a group of like 6 consistent members, and obviously you've only had one meeting, so hopefully those numbers will grow. But in my mind, each one of those individuals will have one role. So one will be the social media director, one will be the I don't know what all these roles are supposed to be, but they all should be. They could take one specific aspect of either uh, the social media, or even if it's just the Blue Sky account, and somebody else takes the Instagram, and somebody else takes the Facebook, and somebody like whatever it is, and then each person has their own role. So that way, when y'all meet, y'all can say, "Hey, these are the things that we've been sharing." Um, each person is trying to get somebody else to also fill in a role, or to come in that they can share that role with, and then of that group of 8 that have started the group, each one basically brings somebody else that will help form the next set of 8. Does that make sense? So there's a group of 8 that are running.
Yeah.
And then each one of those brings one person, eventually, hopefully, brings one person to contribute to the next group of 8. And those next group of 8 work together to build another group of 8. So that way it's not hierarchical, because they're all going to be each independent groups, but you will all work together on the same. We're all still trying to go towards the same goal. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it's kind of exactly what we're doing in Maine. Basically, we've been kind of lucky in a sense to get this core group of people who are starting with us, and I say core as in just meaning like the people who are most actively involved at the moment.
Yeah.
And they happen to be very spread out across the state, which is really cool. And they also happen to be like multi-generational and have like all of these different skills and backgrounds as well. So even though we haven't really like gotten to define roles yet, because we're just getting to know each other, it's starting to seem a little clear, like who's going to fit where and what type of role, because just given like their backgrounds and interests. And then from there, that core group is going to kind of split off and form their own circles,
In their own geographical area.
Yeah, and then roles will be done from there. So the strategizing is really going to start at that local level and go and move up the chain, sort of. And one thing I should let you know is that we're starting to do all chapter briefing meetings, and that means like all of the state chapters that have chapter facilitators at the moment are going to start to meet once a month and report back on what's going on in their state chapter. The first one is going to be scheduled for mid-April. I think it's going to be a hard sell to have that first one be recorded, but I will try. But we can think about.
Fine. Don't worry about it.
We can think about the future, because we are interested in transparency, but we're also getting our sea legs. And so that was in my mind, that like a lot of the strategies would happen at the ground level and then be sort of reported back. But the other problem with that is that it's a chicken egg situation, because there was like some tension and stuff with so many new chapter facilitators coming on and people being like, I don't know what this is, where is that, and da 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 da. There were some tense moments just because there was like miscommunication and people weren't really being directed or helping direct each other. And so that's kind of what led to my CTT idea, is realizing that when new people come in through the national Discord, especially somebody who feels like they might be ready to start their state's chapter and they don't get like the proper orientation and some of their most burning questions answered, or like don't exactly know where to find the answers to those questions, then situations can happen that nobody really wants to happen in terms of miscommunication. So again, it's a chicken egg situation where I was like, maybe if we can make things a little bit easier at the national level for new people who are coming in, not just like potential chapter facilitators, but everybody, and make it easier to know where to send people for what they specifically want to do, then it lets people focus on the local organizing and report back. So it becomes like this loop, this like positive feedback loop, as opposed to things getting bungled up in certain places and compartmentalized when they really shouldn't be, and nobody really wants that. And lastly, I will say that Dalian is the person that is keeping track of who is what chapters are kind of already formed, what chapters have chapter facilitators, and what chapters are meeting. So
Elder, are you part of one of the chapter facilitators?
Yeah, I'm chapter facilitator for Maine. I have a co-facilitator. So I have a co-facilitator, and that person also does our social media. So like they're more the social media piece of it. I'm more the facilitator piece, but we sort of cross over with it at the moment. And then, and I don't intend to like always be in this role. I'm hoping that our chapter decides to sort of kind of rotate it every few months or 6 months or something like that. That's to be determined, but yeah, that's my role at the moment.
Okay. I know I was trying to ask a question, but I don't remember what it was.
So we do have a Dude here. I don't know if you want to jump in. I had a couple ideas, things to share as well, but I want to see if Dude wanted to jump in and you're on mute.
Oh, hi.
Hey, do I have anything to add? We're just having open discussion. We're talking about the chapters and organization, accountability, functionality, decision making, all the great fun things.
Awesome. Yeah, I just caught, I'm not sure where I came in, but I caught the last part of what Elderberry was just saying.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, yeah, just jump in if you want to say anything a little later. We'll give you another chance. We have about 20 minutes before the overall general session comes. We're always down to continue here if people want to. But in the context of what I wanted to add is, for me, I mean, I've been doing this for, I would just say decades. Like, I don't know. I mean, whether it's Occupy or Bernie or just like sustainability, I mean, just go on and on and on. There's so many movements and so many protests and so many activities, and this is great. This is one of them. This is one of the biggest, most monumental projects I've ever seen. It's like we are in a major crises across the board. And so if we don't have a project that actually addresses the level of crises, for me, it's like not even worth putting time into, So that's what I love about the general strike, is it's big enough to actually address the big problems with the billionaire class and like the environmental crises and like the degradation of the environment and potentially billions of people dying and trillions of animals dying and all that. With that said, the number one thing in all movements is burnout. Anyone who's here today, we should basically have an expectation that they could disappear in a couple months, right? We need systems in place. We need models in place that address things coming and going and being in flux, and like not necessarily that stable. These are not stable. People have lives, people have jobs, people have other things going on. So for me, that is where I have a lot of concern, where it's like, it's wonderful and great that we have a meeting of the Massachusetts chapter or the Maryland chapter and all that kind of stuff, and having chapters come together. But what's going to happen in 6 months from now, right? Where will it be then? For me, that's really the identifying metric of understanding the trajectory and where things are. And so anyways, I could go into all those aspects of it, but let's just talk about my perspective of California and doing all the organizing here in the San Francisco Bay Area, because I certainly want to get more and more involved in that, but I also am very interested in the global, and there's a whole bunch of other things, as part of that, because I'm traveling, all the other stuff. But in the context specifically of, let's say I put in, 300 to 500 hours organizing California and the San Francisco Bay Area, that's a lot of time and energy and effort, which I would be willing to do. But at the same time, it's like, to connect to what? What is going on? I mean, this is not a local project. This is a national strike. It is a national project. The decisions are made nationally for when to start, when it's going to happen, what the demands are, and when the strike will stop. And these types of decisions are going to be affecting people's lives. It will be affecting their income, their housing, their food, their families, their ability to live and meet their basic life needs. Potentially 10 million people's life needs affected. And for me, there should be a level of accountability and standard at the national level to, connect into. And I'm not seeing that. And I think that, in my perspective, seeing thousands and thousands, if not almost 10,000 people come through here in the last couple months, and where things went to, and then how it dropped off, and there was a lot of controversy, a lot of people leaving for a lot of different reasons. I feel like there is a core missing component to that accountability and addressing the needs of people, and actually having a framework of follow through and communications and decision making and verification, it's just like, we're talking about people's lives here. This is life and death, and people could end up on the streets. Like, this is not a game. And I'm not feeling the level of seriousness to actually be telling people to stop their livelihoods. 10 million people. It's too much. Check. Sorry.
People are ending up on the street now, though.
Yeah.
Children are ending up on the street every day in my state, and wow. I'm not in California. I know it's a lot worse in California. So yeah, no, people are ending up on the street now. Well, before I started up here, I was working in a homeless shelter, and yeah, there has been a lot of talk about onboarding and getting people engaged. But yeah, we are still in the beginning stages. We're barely at 3% of our goal. But yeah, what's on the website is kind of what people are currently agreeing to, which is that we're kind of going to solidify our goals after we've got millions of people who are all kind of on the same page here. But yeah, we need to get into that, getting on the same page here. So you're right.
Yeah, and I understand, and it's definitely a very concerning situation we are in the world, let alone in the United States, and all the problems, and then people are outraged, and obviously we see the 50-51 movement. We could talk about the bigger coalition that I'm very interested in, as well as connecting, the strike to, the active ongoing protests and the other movements that are happening. So there are definitely things happening, and it's not necessarily, there's no easy answer to anything. So, I am just very, very happy that anything's happening at all. It's just great, right? But the question is, how do we build more, structure at the national level that could potentially help, do this? And so, I'm certainly going to continue these sessions. I know we have 15 minutes left here today, and just see how that evolves. And we have the different voting forum, the other things. And, we'll see how things go, but it's just good to make sure that we understand the pits and falls and the timeline and the trajectory. Because I think what you're saying in terms of, I do believe that there will be a influx, an increase in the momentum will increase over time. And so we'll go from 3% to 10% to maybe 25%, it'll go up faster. But either way, it's still a little bit shaky in terms of what happened and the evaluation of that. I think people are addressing it seriously, but I don't know where and how and why and all the details of it. But it is definitely happening, So
yeah, it's nearly impossible to stay on track of all the conversations that are happening.
Yeah, it's insane.
But I do really think that you three are awesome. I want that to be on record.
Nice.
Thanks. Likewise. And I don't want divert attention too much away from Jay, what you're saying about the national level, because I totally agree. Like, you know, are we losing people because there's not enough coordination at the national level yet for them to feel comfortable being involved? And I guess what I'm realizing now is that I sort of intuited something that I'm not sure that everybody else is intuiting. And I don't even, and I might be intuiting it wrongly, but again, it goes back to what I was saying before, is that I was intuiting that a lot of the true organizing would be happening at the local level and go up through the chain that way. And so even like we've even talked about how it could be even a domino effect, right? Like when you have like in Red State Revolt with the teachers unions, how it was like West Virginia first, and then I believe, and then it was like a domino effect. Like we haven't even discussed like those intricacies that it might in fact happen that way. It might not even happen the way that it's totally outlined in the proposal at the moment in the welcome packet. Like that's just a proposal. That's just a maybe it could happen like this. And I think that that's why it's so important for me for the states to have their own strike cards, but not even just the strike cards too, because there are so many people in industries that are never going to sign a strike card because of the type of industry that they work in. So there's going to have to be other ways to reach those people and other ways to gauge, are we at 11 million here? And some of that stuff is going to have to be like boots on the ground at the local level. And I think we're still building out all of that and how to gauge all of that. And I don't actually, personally, I have been imagining the possibility that it's not just 1 week we all decide to strike, that it might be more of a domino thing. And also that that obviously those systems have to be in place for people in their livelihoods. And that is predominantly the work I assumed, and maybe wrongly, but I assumed that was predominantly the work of the chapter of the local chapters and the local circles on the ground, is they were going to build those safety nets.
I just want to say, I think it is going to be up to the local on the ground people to all that. And for as many people as are going to be on the Discord and are going to be actually signed the strike card, I think there will be probably, I don't know what the number will be, but I think it'll probably be like 2 to 3 times that will actually support it when it happens. So I think that once we get the 11 million that we want, it's not going to be just those 11 million. It's going to be those 11 million plus all of the people that didn't sign the strike card, but have been following and have been paying attention to the boycotts and have been, seeing the way our government is going in this fascist neo-Nazis direction, and they're not for it, but they don't know what to do. And I think once we get enough, I don't think it's just going to be those 11 million. I think the number is going to be way higher than that. It's going to have to be at the local level that's going to have to happen, that we won't see it until it happens at that local level.
Yeah, and if we can get 5 or 10% of the population discussing a general strike, hopefully we can get human rights and dignity for all without having to strike. But yeah, developing those community support systems that would help during a strike would be good for any community either way. So I encourage it highly for everyone to just do it now.
Yeah, and that's kind of what my chapter is focusing on too. It's like, okay, how are we gonna connect existing mutual aid systems and build more based on the need? How are we gonna do strike funds? How are we gonna build co-ops? So I don't see this as just like when are we gonna strike? Like I see it as actually like laying the groundwork so that when that happens, we have all that groundwork already laid. And not only are we doing it amongst ourselves at the local level, but we're reporting back and exchanging information with people across states to kind of help each other and see what works for their state. So I mean, that work is really just beginning, and I think that we're building it together, like we're building the national framework together as we build the local stuff.
Correct. I also think that all those networks that we're going to start connecting with, I think they're already ready. I think they need some way to connect them. Like I think they already exist. We just need to find a way to get them to see the benefit in helping each other. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I mean, I feel like this definitely comes to the core. You know, there was the educational aspects that we talked about in past weeks, and also getting into the core GSUS, you know, and general strike goals and focus, right? And I think that is really the bottom line that we talk so much about on the ground, direct mutual aid, collaborative systems, making sure people have food, housing, water, all the things that people need on the ground at the local level. And so I feel like when we talk about chapters, that there needs to be very clear vocabulary between three very, very different things. There's the national level, and then there's anything that's in between the national and the local level. What do you call it? You could call it state, regional, whatever. And then you have actual local on the ground, you know, support network, right? And I think that it's you know, getting some data on how many actual on the ground support networks there are would be helpful to understand. Because that could be, as you know, for me, I'm hearing about 10 state chapters or something like that, but on the ground local support networks, there could be as few as, you know, 3 or 4. I don't know. It would be interesting to get some information on that.
That's also only GSUS.
Well, that was my next thing I was about to say. That was exactly what I was about to say. That the mutual aid model of just connecting all of the local groups, and like they're saying that the farmers groups, and like you have the housing groups and the food groups and all these different groups, like it's such a huge monumental project done on a national level that in some ways I would almost categorize that as a separate thing. Because the idea of telling the world that GSUS is going to be responsible for all local support doesn't make any sense to me.
That's way insane. There's no way we.
I don't think that that's what's being said. I think that GSUS at the national level is just trying to bring together people and organizations, and with the idea of exchanging information and education in preparation for a general strike. I don't believe that. It doesn't seem to me like there's any kind of national group here that is going to dictate exactly how that happens. There's just a basic framework of how it could happen, and essentially the idea is that we connect all of these things and industries at the local level, because the people who get involved inevitably are going to be part of all of those industries, and that basically we just start building that framework together. Because like I see people from healthcare coming in. I've even seen lawyers coming into the Discord. you know, it's not just food workers. It's not just retail workers. It's not just people in the tech industry. Like, you know, there's a wide variety here. It's not even just people who are currently working. There's retirees. There's veterans coming in. And if we can use their skills and resources and at the local level and kind of figure out what all of those veins are and how they connect, it doesn't have to, like, GSUS doesn't actually have to be a separate thing. It's just the name for the thing that we're all trying to do, which is like build something better for all of our industries and for all of our prosperity and hope and livelihoods and survival. you know, so I think that the more we just keep trying to connect everybody, the more the whole puzzle is going to make sense. And there doesn't have to be such a delineation. Like this to me just seems to be like a brand for the movement, essentially, that is actually gonna outgrow, like the movement itself is gonna outgrow. This is just an entry point for me for something I've been wanting to do anyway. You know, it's just it's a place to connect and really build more. I don't know, I'm waxing eloquent at the moment, but hopefully I'm making some sense.
You are.
Yeah.
Yeah, well said.
I'll respond. We only have 4 minutes to get left if we want to jump on the other group meeting. But in the context of this particular thing, like, I think this is an interesting conversation here. But it's like I don't know how much time we spent in all the messages about specifically the difference between a state chapter organizer and a state chapter facilitator and just vocabulary, right? And how important it is to have clear vocabulary about what we're talking about as something as just like that, the difference between a coordinator and a facilitator at the state level. When we're talking about entire local communities of potentially tens of thousands, if not millions of people, like I have heard multiple times of people who are actively engaged in their local communities feeling like GSUS coming in saying what we just say that we're going to be wanting to do is kind of like stepping on toes on other organizations and movements that have already been doing that potentially for 50 years, you know, yeah. and that those groups already exist, and that, you know, if we actually separated and had clear vocabulary between, okay, this is what the strike is, and then these are the things that we connect into, and here are different types of vocabulary terminologies for, like, you know, community networks and, you know, community centers and, you know, mutual aid, you know, networks, that is not what we do. We separate that out and that they do that, and we support them to do that better and send people into the existing networks and organizations that do that work to link in GSUS. I think the vocabulary would be a lot clearer, because the idea that we're doing that seems like it's on stepping on people's toes, and maybe it's a duplication of efforts, right? A check.
Probably.
Yeah. I think a lot of the states still do just have like one person at a time, though, and I feel like if we make these kind of roles and stuff and we put it in a glossary, and a bunch of more people come in and they're like, oh, well, there's only one person, you know, here, and they took the best roles or something. I just feel like growing, you know, our numbers right now helps us stay decentralized. We can say, you know, like there's no seniority here, but a lot of people, especially when they first come in, they feel like there is some. Right.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I think that's. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, and yeah, so I do think some people that will change as we grow, and that some people might not like how we've defined some things if we do it right away. But I love that we're talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Really quick, Maya Moo, if you're here for the group meeting, that's going to be in the group right above with Day and Dalian. Yeah, so. Just to make sure, you know, and the rest of us might go there too, but yeah, check. I have to say that.
I agree about defining things too much before, because we're still growing so fast, and like, roles and things are going to change. You know, it's important for it to sort of happen organically, because again, we're talking about a massive movement, and I just want to mention that. I mean, so many people that are already involved in GSUS are involved in other organizations as well. So they're not just, it's not that people are just signing up to like be a part of GSUS and that's the only thing that they're doing in their activist life or in their work life or whatever. We all wear different hats, most of us in other organizations as well. So we're connecting those things in other industries and other organizations. So we're connecting those things into the GSUS movement. So that's just something to keep in mind as well, is that we see all these new people coming in, and that doesn't mean that all of them are just saying like, oh, I'm only here for GSUS. I mean, there's many people that are wearing other hats and connecting in the work that they are already doing to the GSUS movement. And dude, I forget what you were just saying, but again, going back to like defining roles, I think that we can do it as much as we can, but then they're always going to have to be redefined when there's a new influx of people. And so, again, going back to like just putting into practice, and I take this from like my hospitality experience in restaurants and stuff, like putting into practice like this. Like I've worked in restaurants where like every single person was supposed to know how to answer the phone and what to say and how to put it on hold. And if you're not the position that knows the answer to the question, then you put it on hold and you find the person that knows that question, so that every kind of new person, every guest gets a good experience, and it's never just like, well, I don't know the answer, and then you're just like left on hold or something. And so like developing that constant practice and constantly training people of like, this is how you find a new person to invite. This is like what the welcome should look like. And we all practice it together, because you want people to be like, not only do I want to come back to eat at this restaurant, but I might want to work here too, because I like it. Anyway, that's a silly little restaurant metaphor, but enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Yes, indeed.
And yeah, as my state, just like eight or 10 weeks ago, people would pop in, be like, hello, is anyone here? And then like leave the Discord after a day or two. But now we do have some growth, and we did have an in-person meeting between the General Strike Minnesota. And yeah, we're thinking about inviting, almost 7,000 people to start collaborating with us now. I think it is the right time to be having these conversations.
I agree. I think everybody's been waiting. And I think they just didn't have a direction. And I think the state of the government is kind of giving us a direction to go.
Yeah, and a lot of us feel very urgent about it. After Roe v. Wade, it was bad, but now it's verging on. I mean, been less and less ignorable as we go forward. I don't know how anyone can still feel like. Yeah, I've seen some of the discussions lately on here about people feeling kind of hopeless and stuff, and I don't want to trauma dump on here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that that's a good point to bring up, because when you see people having a sense of urgency and coming into this space with a sense of urgency, then you can kind of understand why. And everybody, there's a lot of people showing up who have never done activism work before, and they're like, I just want to do something, and again, that's why it's important, to like be the welcoming committee if you can, and try to direct people and just be like, hey, we haven't totally figured this out yet, but here, this might be what you're looking for. And, we just develop a practice of doing that together, and like, we are going to build this shit. We're going to figure it out. Sorry, excuse my language. And that's the process. That's literally what we're doing now.
Uh-huh.
And I'm sorry. I'll finish up real quick. It's hard to impose a structure when none of us are familiar with what that really looks like when we're building something new together, but we can do a step-by-step method in my belief, to do that.
Yeah, and this momentum is exciting. I get why Eliza wanted to get it out there right away.
I didn't quite get that last part. To get what out right away? The Eli what?
Project Starfish, yeah.
Oh, Project Starfish.
Why she just posted that without without going through all the separate teams first.
Yeah.
Because it felt like we
Yeah. Well,
We doubled in
my
a month or so.
She doesn't know like how much the teams had started to form. Like I think at the time she was unaware that there was like this forming that was happening, and I'm glad that she like modified it to be like, oh wait, oh we're there yet? Yeah, okay, yes, this can be collaborative. This can be, you know. I think she didn't realize.
Well, I think we did. We saw a lot of people building new Discords. Like the tech team had built their new Discord for the, you know, and I think social media had multiple between. So we were trying to decide like how to keep track of stuff as well. And I think that was where it was like, well, if we wanted to be really decentralized, we would split into more manageable group sizes.
Yeah. In terms of like, you know, moving forward and next steps, I mean, for me, the most important thing isn't necessarily what we do, but how we do it. And like, you know, my goal is like literally just creating one group, which, you know, we're coming together and people come in and out and things like that. And I'm going to just stick with the same time unless a decision is made to change it. And I put the voting form together. And so you guys can all vote on the voting form, but and then we can review it, you know, in future weeks. But for me, the idea, the purpose of this group would be kind of like a public national sharing circle to 1, build collaborative decision-making space, 2, answer questions for actively new engaged members, 3, review national ideas and proposals from anyone, and 4, to review all existing policies that have been made public, right? Just anything that's public to review it, understand it better. And for me, it's just like, you know, if we can just create one space that runs kind of like sociocracy or runs like, you know, a functional space with topics and agendas and decision making and all that, 'cause even if it's not like an official decision, it doesn't have to be a official decision. It's just, it's like an experience. When you have an experience of collective participatory democracy and consensus decision making, then you can understand it, because you can't talk about it. You have to experience it, and then they can share that with other groups and keep playing around with it, you know. So for me, it's all about like lead by example. You know, let's just create something and just slowly build it out, and then just have one spot, and then things can evolve, and then it can go back and forth. People say, oh, this worked better, and then we can change and evolve. And so that's kind of like my goal. So I do hope you guys will read and vote on this voting form and see if we get agreement on any of these potential ideas. And then overall, for me, you know, there's no decisions without discussion, and the real time is always the primary communication, you know. So next week, same time, I know some people coming in and out, and we'll just see how it evolves, but I'm also down to schedule other times. But I definitely want to continue and to see how it evolves, and this was a really great discussion today, and I'm also down to continue today as well. So yes, very good.
Jay, yeah. I think I just figured out what you're trying to do here. And I know you want to get to more concrete stuff, you know, as quickly as possible, and I understand why. But I realized that in the immediate what you're doing is you're doing like an open whiteboard brainstorm session that anyone is welcome to. And it just kind of hit me that that's what you're doing, and you're hoping that the outcome of that is just some sort of more concrete form of decision making for in whatever aspect or channel that we need. Does that sum it up?
Sure. I mean, it's just like, for me, the goal is getting agreement between whoever wants to get agreement and whatever we can get agreement on. So I can make proposals and I can have ideas. Other people have ideas. You have the CTT. It's great, but the hard thing is getting agreement on it, you know? So yeah, like slowly working through the ideas. I mean, I don't care if it takes months or if it takes years. I mean, hopefully we have a strike within the next year. We'll see what happens. But it's just a matter of just progressing little by little to try to build a cohesive understanding and collaboration effort that is, you know, mutual. You know, it's like a mutual beneficial contextual framework that, you know, the fact that it happens to be public is just my shenanigans, right? I'm just like, it's like my personal preference, but it doesn't have to be public at all. Anyone could do this privately and just create space to just like, and any team could do that as well. So for me, it's like we could do a team, we could get focused on CTT, get focused on a specific issue, but there should also be space that's like open, you know, where people can bring any issue, you know? Yeah, check.
Great, thank you. I think I understand better. And if we want to focus more on CTT next time, that's fine with me if it's okay with other people. This is a proposal that I put forth in the project section of the team section on the Discord. Is called Continuity Task Team. That's why we're calling it CTT. And you can look at, if you scroll to the top of that project thread, Continuity Task Team, scroll to the top. That's where I put in my outline.
I do love that. I saw someone suggested an even longer acronym for it. I would like if we could shorten it to 2 words. It's I just don't like acronyms that much. But
yeah, I'm not attached to the name. I'm not even attached to the proposal itself. I don't even really want like ownership of it. Like I really want like another small group of people to run with it. So propose another name, whatever you want to do. Take it, edit it, put it in a document. It was just sort of my gift to the community.
Yeah, and I did add that to the voting form, and I'll copy and paste and put it in the notes as well. And also, I just want to mention for Cinnamon, you're welcome to chime in if you want to, but the group right above us, this is the group meeting, is the weekly welcome session. So if you're here for the weekly welcome session, you should jump into the group right above us. If you want to talk here, you're welcome to. Also, I did propose that we switch this meeting specifically to Jitsi, so that random people don't just happen through. That would be a separate space from the general group meeting, but also here people see it differently too. So anyways, that's either way. But anyways, we can continue that. But yes, I think that we should talk more about the CTT. I think it's a really great vision, and there seems to be some interest in it for sure, from what I've reading.
Thank you, Jay. Thanks for saying that. I appreciate it. I whipped it up really fast, but I did work hard on it. So I'd love for other people to get involved and like I said, take it and run with it. I think I am gonna hop over to the welcome session.
Cool.
Same, and yeah, I love everything I've heard here in the last 30 minutes. And yeah, I would suggest bringing most proposals to like one of the teams. If you have not joined one in the channels and roles, if you haven't joined multiple or all of the teams, but outreach is the one that I think is the most relevant for growing our movement. And then there's strategy and community support. I'm trying to find it right now. I'm scrolling too fast.
We were thinking that the CTT might best connect into the strategy team, right, Elderberry? Wasn't that what you were kind of implying?
Yeah, I thought it might. Now that I've started to get to know strategy team a little bit more at the forming of it, I think that CTT might connect into the strategy team, but we should also use it as a way to bring other people in. And the idea with CTT is that they are connecting all of the core teams at the national level and also talking locally as well. So and I will say outreach team is doing a great job forming, because they're working on national partnerships and local partnerships and the union aspect, both national union and local union stuff, although that's sort of like a slowly more evolving piece of it. But Lucky is their name on Discord, and they're the one that's kind of like leading right now with the outreach team. And there's a bunch of people that are doing those meetings. They're kind of working on outreach at all levels. So if you want to get involved with that, and even on a specific level, I'm sure Lucky and those team members could use some more help and support figuring out all of the different places that outreach fits in.
Awesome. Yeah, and I am seeing that there's discussion in multiple teams already about it.
So I think that also brings up
with you anyway.
Yeah, I think that also brings up one of the concerns that I have, which is that if you don't perfectly fit into one single team, you're kind of left out. It's like there's a missing gap of the inter-team collaboration. Like if you have this proposal, these ideas, and you're trying to connect things between multiple teams, where do you go? It's like this vacancy, this open gap, right? It's like everyone always tries to push you into a specific team or a specific chapter, But if you're not GLBT, it's like, what are you supposed to do? I'm not G, I'm not L, I'm not B and T. So now we have GLBTQITF plus everything, right? So it's like there's always a space for everybody, and the fact that there's seems to be, if you don't fit perfectly in the existing mold, there's no catch-all, right? So I think that also could be part of what the CTT is attempting to solve. Also, before I stop, Charism, if you are here for the group meeting above, this is the welcome group meeting is above us. So we're just doing we're just trying to finish up our recorded meeting from before. So, and we're going to be joining there too. Yeah, check.
And yeah, before I was even a mod, I would hate seeing that, hey, there's a discussion happening over here in #NoAccess. So I had joined most of the roles and teams just so I could see what was being talked about, because it was, a lot easier to just stay caught up on everything, even 6 months ago, but especially a year ago.
Jay, what you said is really great, and that's exactly why I proposed CTT is a team that can kind of unite those threads. And it's also why I've been sort of like a self-assigned weaver of like jumping between threads and bopping and weaving. And I won't be doing that forever. It's just something that I decided to do at the moment in place of a CTT. So again, you're catching my drift a lot. Anyway, I'm gonna head over to the welcome meeting, hopefully with Charisma Kid, who is somebody I just vetted for chapter facilitator.
Awesome, cool. Well, we'll just keep connecting, and I'll be back next week. Thanks so much. Anything else, JD, you wanted to add or say bye?
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.